Hi, so this is my first post in the sub. I want to start off by saying that reading all the encounters posted here made me want to share my own. I don't know if it's as intense as some, but my experience definitely scared the shit out of me. To start, let me explain myself. I'm 5'7", 113 pounds, and I was 16 at the time of the encounter. I'm a multi-sport athlete: track, handball, volleyball, basketball, and even hockey, and I have insomnia. This all happened around 2 a.m. on August 10th of 2019. I had been over to my best friend's place because she had just returned home from a vacation and she had birthday presents for me, hoodies and gummies, if you're curious. I had spent almost an hour there already and wanted to head back home soon because honestly, my town is scary at night. Drug dealers, rapists, and murders. You know the deal. So I waved goodbye to my best friend and started walking down her street. I guess a party had just let up because behind me at the end of the road, about 20 or 30 yards from where I was standing, there were a couple of men walking across the crosswalk. They were all both pretty tall, and I'm guessing between 5'11" and 6'3". The two seemed harmless at first when I looked in their direction, but soon they came to a stop. They were both looking at me. At this point, I felt uncomfortable, so I kept walking. That's when I overheard what one of them said. "Hey, that's a girl." At this, I whipped my head around. They were starting to walk in my direction now, and one of the two men had moved over towards the sidewalk where there was no light at all. I knew at this point that something wasn't right, and I began to pick up my pace. They were still getting closer, and I didn't know where the second guy was, but when I looked back, the first guy was still following me down the middle of the road. I think that they were planning to cut me off and try to trap me between the two of them. And the minute I was about 13 yards from the T intersection, I started to run, and that's when the yelling started. Oh great, now she's running. I hooked a sharp right and then left. I could still hear them behind me, and at this point, all I knew was that I couldn't stop moving. I had to lose them somehow. I was coming up to an apartment building with a small parking lot behind it, and there were no lights. I had made the split-second decision to veer off into the parking lot, and I squeezed myself under one of the cars. I don't know how long I waited there. It could have been a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. I watched the two men run past, and they didn't bother to check under the cars, which was definitely in my favor. The minute I felt that I was safe, I backtracked and took a different route back to my home. I was too scared to take the main route in the fear that I would have bumped into them. I know what I'm about to say is stupid, but I didn't go to the police. I wouldn't have been able to give a proper description of the men because I hadn't seen their faces. If there's anything I learned from my experience, it's that no matter who you are, you need to be extremely careful. You can think that part of your town or city that you live in is safe, but that really isn't the case. There is no protective barrier to keep out people with bad intentions. So please, whatever you do, watch your surroundings as if your life depends on it. If I had been listening to my music and not paying attention, I hate to think what could have happened to me. I hope that no one else has to experience the fear that I did. It was almost like a prey being chased by predators. And to the men who followed me, let's never meet again. I am a 31-year-old woman. This happened a few years back. I was walking from a friend's house to meet my son's father, who is now my ex, at a bar we frequented in those days. It was winter, icy and snowing, with giant piles of snow all around, and I was walking from a friend's house around 9 p.m. down an alley that served as a driveway area for many houses. Not a great neighborhood, but not particularly bad either. I was wearing my apocalypse boots, waterproof, knee-high, winterproof, and I usually have headphones in blaring music while I walk, but that night, for some reason, I decided not to. In hindsight, that is what saved me. I'm about the equivalent of 2 to 3 blocks away from the bar. There's a younger guy, early 20s, walking about 50 feet behind me. "Hey, you." I turn around. It seems he's talking to someone else. "Hey." I look back, then continue walking. "Yeah, you. No, don't turn around, sweetheart." I start to walk faster as I realize he's getting closer. Ahead of me, I see an SUV running, backed out of a parking spot, but blocking my path, and I turned around. There's another guy. The door to the SUV opens, and there's a couple of guys in it looking at me. One gets out and stands by the open door, and I turn to look at the guy behind me. Out of fucking nowhere, about 5 more guys come out, surrounding me from a distance and slowly closing in. The realization that they were hiding behind piles of plowed snow hits me. I realize that they are just standing and watching me. A couple of them had their phones out and were recording something that was about to go down. Nobody was smiling, but they were closing in on me, trying to get me to walk to the SUV. Fight or flight kicked in, and I decided I didn't want to know what was about to happen, and I wanted to catch them off guard, so instead of running forward, I bolted to the left. Thank God for the boots. I could run across the ice no problem. I ended up cutting through a few yards and made it to the bar. So guys, trying to get me into your SUV while filming? Let's not meet. This all happened very recently. I'm a young woman who works late nights at a bar in a city, but I live in a rural area outside of town. It was a very slow night, so we closed early, and one of the bouncers walked me to my car. I didn't particularly notice anyone following me while I was on the main roads, just a normal sprinkling of cars. And I first noticed them when they turned onto one of the super small roads that leads toward the area where I live. It was strange because people rarely pull off onto that road at the same time as me, as it isn't very populated. But as soon as we were on the winding and unlit road, they began to behave strangely. They'd flash their bright lights at me, then ride my ass until they were practically scraping my bumper, then pull really far back. I tried speeding up and slowing down, but that didn't seem to matter. When we came to the first intersection, they turned on their signal to go right, but when I went straight, I watched them in my mirror turn the nose of their car to the right, pause for a few seconds, and then follow me straight. This continued for a while. At the next intersection, I signaled left and waited until they did too, and then quickly turned right. And of course, they followed. I then called the cops and told them I was headed towards a gas station I knew to be open, and was the only place remotely nearby that might have people at it, since almost nothing is 24 hours right now. They said they'd dispatch police to meet me there, and I tried to focus on driving slowly so I didn't beat them there. When I got to the gas station, I pulled into the little turn lane, which made the car pause, and then quickly step on the gas and squeal around the corner. I only really had time to glimpse the general look of the car and the driver's face. and they were alone and very strange looking. They were incredibly pale, like albino pale with snort equally pale hair, maybe the tiniest, but darker. They were completely androgynous, at least from what I could see, and they stared at me for a second before bolting away. The police took like 20 minutes to arrive after that, so I just sat in front of the gas station and watched the road for the cars with my doors locked. The police said there wasn't anything they could do, and my original assumption was that it was a patron from work, but we'd had so few customers, I feel like I would have recognized them. I don't even know why they would have followed me the full hour, only to begin making themselves really obvious. If anyone has words of advice, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, here's some background info. This happened years ago, and my friend and I were both 16. Her parents took us to Wildwood Boardwalk for the weekend to celebrate her birthday. We got dressed, and her parents let us go alone to the boardwalk for a few hours during dusk. We started walking up the road to get to the ramp onto the boards when we hear this guy pretty far ahead of us screaming at someone. We couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, but we could tell by his arms flailing that he was furious. At this point in time, there wasn't really a sidewalk, so we were on the road, and we see him jump in his car, and he takes off. As he approaches, he almost runs us over, so we jump out of the way, and me being the tough 16-year-old girl, I threw my arms up and said, "What the fuck?" Well guys, he sees this and immediately slams on his brakes, pops up his trunk, and jumps out of the car. We were frozen in terror. He started saying, "Come here, come here," and then pulls out a gun out of his trunk and points it directly at us. I could feel my legs weaken and my heart is in my throat. Right in front of us was a little intersection, so we booked it down that side of the road as fast as our legs could go. We ran for a bit before I had the courage to look behind us. Luckily, he wasn't there, so I assume he didn't follow us. We were so shaken up that we went right back to the hotel to tell her parents. Unfortunately, everything happened so fast, and we didn't have much to go on, so nothing really came from it. So scary guy from Wildwood, let's never meet. Hi everybody, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. At the same time, if you want to send a story for me to read, or you want to follow my social media, please check the description of the video. It would have my email and my links to my social media. And don't forget to like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and click that bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. Once again, thanks for watching.